To start today's video, we're going to briefly leave the German armed forces in the period before World War I and move forward 40 to 50 years to discuss the Royal Canadian Air Force in the Cold War by examining my RCAF Beer Stein. The Beer Stein is for number 1 Fighter Wing, F Squadron, located at RCAF Station Marville, located in northeastern France. This fighter wing was one of 4 RCAF wings consisting of 3 fighter squadrons each, established in Europe in the early 1950s to support the goals of NATO in Europe during the Cold War. Number 1 Fighter Wing moved into the completed Marville base in 1955, but its time here would be short. In 1963, the government of France under Charles de Gaulle began to pull France's military away from NATO to become independent from her Western allies. In 1967, France's pullout from NATO was complete and the RCAF closed its base at Marville and left France for good. The Beer Stein has depictions of a couple of fighter aircraft in use by the RCAF in the late 1950s and into the 1960s, such as this one of a Canadair Sabre. This Canadian-built version of the American Sabre fighter jet came into service with the RCAF in 1950 and remained in service until 1962, when it was replaced by the CF-104 Starfighter. As the finial of the Stein's pewter lid, and on one side of the body of the Stein, are depictions of the Avro Canada CF-100 Canuck. This twin-engine fighter interceptor was built by Avro Canada, which also was developing the ill-fated Avro Arrow that was cancelled in 1959. The Canuck saw very long service with the RCAF, being introduced in 1952. The last Canuck left RCAF service in 1981. In the famous words of Monty Python, now for something completely different. Instead of a beer stein, we will now take a look at an ashtray for HMCS Bonaventure. Since we were discussing Canadian military aviation with the last Beer Stein in review, I thought an examination of this ashtray was appropriate, as it is from the Canadian Navy's last aircraft carrier. HMCS Bonaventure was a Majestic-class aircraft carrier which was initially ordered by the British Royal Navy in the later stages of World War II to be named HMS Powerful. After World War II and before the completion of construction, this aircraft carrier became redundant to the needs of the British Navy, and it was sold to Canada. The Bonnie came into Royal Canadian Navy service in 1957. The Bonaventure was named for Bonaventure Island, a bird sanctuary in the Gulf of St. Lawrence. The Bonnie's mission was anti-submarine patrol in the North Atlantic and to help protect ships against enemy aircraft as part of Canada's contribution to NATO. The Bonaventure carried 34 aircraft, including 16 McDonnell F-2H-3 Banshee jet fighters for her fleet defense role. The Bonnie was a bit on the small side for the use of jet aircraft, and she was just barely able to cope with launching and retrieving these jets, but she got the job done anyways. For her anti-submarine role, the Bonaventure carried 8 Grumman CS-2F Tracker anti-submarine warfare aircraft that were built in Canada under license with Grumman by de Havilland Canada. The tracker had a 4-man crew and could remain airborne for 7 hours without refueling. Submarines on the surface were detected by the tracker's radar, and submerged subs were detected by a magnetic device in the tail of the aircraft or by dropping sonar buoys. The Bonnie also initially carried the Sikorsky HO-4S helicopters that were replaced by the Sea King in 1963. These helicopters were for search and rescue and in support of her anti-submarine role. In 1969, the Canadian government, in a budget-saving strategy, decided to get rid of the Bonaventure. The Bonnie left Canadian Navy service in 1970, 13 short years after she first entered service with the Canadian Navy in 1957. The Bonaventure was sold to a Taiwan shipyard where she was scrapped in 1971. Well, folks, that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed what you just saw. And if you did, please hit that old like button below and consider subscribing to my channel. Till next time, keep safe and well.